M-rated. It's 101 minutes in duration. And, Jacqui, you're one to talk about dog because I don't think your life would be complete without Bob, your faithful hound. What sort of dog is Bob?
Well, Bob is a rescue boy, and as they say, he rescued me rather than me rescuing him, but it goes both ways. He is a fox terrier crossed, as they say, with a Basenji, which is an African hunting dog, apparently. And he's a one-of-a-kind, and he's almost 15, and he's just, bee's knees kind of dog.
Well,
you've got a good dog too, haven't you, Alex?
We have a wonderful dog, but I've got a really sad dog story for you to kick things off. My son lost his dog, and I have never seen him in greater trauma. He was inconsolable, and so much so that he found it difficult to work. And he really, there's no doubt that we get so attached because they're members of the family. And, I mean, look, I remember when we lost our last dog, my wife couldn't get out of bed. And it got to the stage where I had to go out and find another hound because she was incapable of acting at that point of time. She was that traumatized. And I think that's the experience that many people have. Dave, are you a dog person or not?
I am normally. I don't have a dog at the moment, but I've got some cats that I absolutely love. And similar to your wife, I lost one of my cats a couple of years ago, and him and I had this really special bond when he was quite often a guest on my radio show. He used to join all of our video interviews, and bands around the world used to ask, "Where's Metal Cat?" if we were doing an interview and he wasn't there. I lost him, and it was
named Metal Cat.
His actual name was Timon, but bands nicknamed him Metal Cat because he was on our heavy metal show. But yeah, when he passed away, it was like a piece of me had gone. It absolutely devastated me, and I was the same when I lost my dog a few years earlier than that as well. So yeah, you do. You have a special bond with your pets.
No question about that at all. And there's sort of a memorial in my son's. They've just received the ashes, and they've done something special with the ashes. We have a very special hound at the moment, which is I've always wanted a pure white dog. And until this point, we've never managed it. There's always been a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Not sure what you call that, but there you go. And now we have got a Japanese Spitz, and they are beautiful, absolutely stunning. They get complimented all the time, and I think they know that they're beautiful because they walk along the street and they prounce. They don't just walk. They're like walking on a cushion of air, and there's a certain arrogance about the way that they go about doing things. But again, the thought of actually going away for a few days leads to more trauma in our family because what do you then do with the dog, right? Oh, no, we don't want to give it to somebody who doesn't know the dog, etc., etc. Peter Krausz, you don't appear to me to be a person who's into cats and dogs, but tell me if I'm wrong.
You are absolutely correct. I have never owned an animal at all. I'm too busy seeing films.
Very good. So even as a kid, Peter?
No, never. In fact, when I was a kid, I was actually bitten by a dog, and that led to a small aversion for a period of time to dogs, although I don't mind them now. But no, never had a dog.
I was traumatised by a koala, Jacqui.
How can you bear that?
Thank you very much. No, I was. My parents took me to a koala enclosure in some particular facility. I think it could have been, what's the place in the Dandenongs that has koalas? No, anybody? I can't remember. Anyway,
I think it's gone now. Was it Fritz's Wildlife Park? Because that was around in the Dandenongs.
No, it was
Healesville Sanctuary.
Healesville Sanctuary. Yeah, I think it was Healesville Sanctuary. Very good, Peter. And the koala latched on to me, shall we say, and scratched me, and I'm thinking, oh my golly, it's mind you, there's a story over the last couple of days that you probably saw talking about pets and animals and so forth, but this wasn't. Where a young child was attacked by sitting on a porch or playing on a porch was attacked by a kangaroo.
Yeah, the little 3-year-old. I saw that.
That's right. Yeah, which again, I mean, incredible. Very, very sad. And, obviously this is a wild animal, so who knows whether there was food there or whatever. I didn't read the full story. Let's talk a bit more about Dog, though. The parents of a soldier traumatised by the horrors of war. Now, the soldier's name was Riley Rodriguez, who subsequently died, want the specially trained dog that worked alongside him to take pride of place at his funeral. And that means a 2,500 kilometre road trip with the canine. And Jacqui, you mentioned your particular breed of animal. This is a Belgian Malinois. And I can't say that I've heard of a Belgian Malinois prior to seeing the movie Dog. And the dog is named Lulu. Now, the dog has seen 8 tours and has been on the front line for 7 years. And as a result of all of that, the dog has been left equally shell-shocked to Riley Rodriguez. Lulu's vicious nature, and I put vicious in inverted commas, means that she is constantly muzzled. And the man chosen to make the journey with her is another combat veteran, Jason Briggs, played by Channing Tatum, who's been left with a brain injury for which he takes medication. Briggs is desperate to get back into the fray, but that needs a sign-off by his commanding officer, Ranger Jones, played by Luke Forbes, one that he's not willing to give. That is until the job of transporting this volatile work dog comes up. And now the word is that if Briggs can successfully complete this task, this is 2,500 kilometre road trip, the captain will seriously contemplate allowing him, that's Jackson Briggs, back into the fold. And it is as that point. Sorry, what I'm saying is that it's clear that Lulu will be quite a handful, just as she proves to be. And for much of his time, it's Briggs doing the chasing, trying to remain in control of the animal, because the dog snarls, it attacks, it bites, it runs away, and so on. In other words, she's generally recalcitrant. Through the road trip, we get to learn more about Briggs, Lulu, and the deceased soldier. And in spite of what Lulu puts Briggs through, an unmistakable bond develops between dog and supposedly dog handler. And there is a great deal of onus in this movie on Channing Tatum, who also co-directs alongside the screenwriter Reed Carolyn to carry this movie. So a lot of onus on him. And I reckon he does so readily. He's rather easy to warm to, expressing humour and frustration. Though I must say, Dave, I struggle to believe his character had brain damage.
Yeah, I actually saw it more that he had post-traumatic stress disorder. I know they
I would agree with that. But I mean, they referenced brain damage on more than the odd occasion.
Definitely, they did. They referenced it quite a few times that he'd had head trauma with one of the incidents that he had. But I do think that his symptoms were more like post-traumatic stress. But I think that's the part of this film that really surprised me. I kind of went into this film seeing Channing Tatum's name attached to it, and I was expecting something kind of light and fluffy. And I'll admit, dog films get me all the time. The only 2 movies that I've cried in over the last few years have been Red Dog and Marley and Me. If you have a dog story in there, it seems to emotionally affect me. But I saw this movie kind of being a little bit like movies like Courage of Lassie from way back in the 40s and 50s, where you had this story about a dog, and that dog takes people on a journey, and that person learns about themselves. This film really surprised me. I think it had a little bit more of an alternative feel to it than what I was actually expecting. And I've been pretty critical of Channing Tatum and his acting over the years, but this film certainly grew on me.
Yeah, I agree. I think he did a really good job, Jacqui. It's one of those things that I thought it was going to be. I didn't cry, but there was certainly emotion there. What about you?
Absolutely no emotion at all from me. I thought Channing Tatum was really flat, like oddly flat, as if he was almost uncomfortable being there. And I found his monologues in the car. I mean, man and dog on a road trip, and he just talked the whole way through, apart from the times that they had these regular episodes where something would happen to change it up, and none of them were particularly portentous. But anyway, I just thought it was a really flat film, and I found it actually quite distressing at times, the way but obviously the story was that in the end it's all going to turn out wonderful. But 95% of the film was showing how they didn't get along, man and dog. And he didn't seem to care at all for the dog. I found it very distressing the way he didn't care for it, and he left it in the car locked up for hours while he went boozing and chasing women. And then we're supposed to feel sympathy for him? I didn't get that. The dog was dangerous, the dog was angry, but he left it unmuzzled, and it wasn't under his control.
I must admit that element, Jacqui, the element of unmuzzling her, it's Lulu, unmuzzling Lulu so early, obviously that's part and parcel of the film, but I would have thought that is not the way to go. I thought that was a bit odd. What did you think, Dave, about that element?
I thought it just showed how inexperienced he was with dogs, and I think it also showed that at the start of the film he was a very selfish person, that, as Jacqui said, he would go into a bar and try to pick up women while the dog was locked in the car. I saw that as part of what not a nice guy he was at the start of this film, and I think that's part of what I liked about this film, that it had that Greyfriars Bobby, Lassie Come Home element to it, where the dog changes the person rather than the person changing the dog.
Peter, it is a journey movie, as Jacqui was alluding to, in which the outcome is all but a foregone conclusion, but it's the episodes along the way that count, and we, the audience, are of course privy to the highs and lows, both human and animal.
That's true, but let's talk about this film briefly, because it really isn't so much about the dog. That might be the title of the film, but this film is actually a tribute to returned soldiers, and the film is framed in that sort of way, especially at the end. And so the issue of post-traumatic stress syndrome is a major issue amongst so many returning soldiers from Afghanistan and so on. And what this film and what Tatum has tried to do with Reed is to portray the dislocation, the difficulty of attaching emotions or working with other people, etc., because of the pervasive notion of post-traumatic stress. And it was quite clear that the soldier who died, that they're going to the funeral for, died in a car accident because he committed suicide because of the post-traumatic stress that he suffered. And so I found this a very interesting, dramatic exploration using the hook of the dog that also has post-traumatic stress, if you want to put it that way, which needed to be unmuzzled from time to time to be able to live a more comfortable life, because otherwise it would be completely restrained and would have to be put down. So I think for many of the narrative points in the film, it is a tribute to returned soldiers, and I think it works quite well because of that. But if you're looking for a feel-good movie about a dog, this is not it.
Well, I mean, I reckon underpinning a generally light approach, because it does have that light approach, is the trauma of war and the devastation it brings, which are consequential for so many, as you say, who served along with their loved ones and comrades. And I mean, it's still, but there's still that sort of borrowing the likes of Turner and Hooch, right? It still is a film pitched at a wider audience, and it includes large dollops of feel-good entertainment. So, I mean, Jacqui, you struggled with that element, correct? That's what you were suggesting.
I struggled with all of the film, actually, and I would like to ask Peter if he found the basis of the film credible, in that the commanding officer would send this obviously traumatised soldier. He knew he was. That's why he wasn't going to let him straight back into the fray, as you say. Credible that he would send him off on a road trip with a dangerous dog that actually,
Sorry, Jacqui, you're cutting in and out. Sorry, just repeat that, Jacqui.
Apologise, I didn't realise it was me. Is it credible that he would have sent, the commanding officer would send Jackson off with a dangerous dog Lulu in a car for 4 days to drive across the country?
Well, my response to that is yes, because first of all, these are two damaged creatures, if you like to put it that way, and by pairing them up, there is a possibility of some sort of development for both of them in terms of feeding off each other and improving their condition. And also there is that aspect that the Channing Tatum character was wanting to go back into combat, which is an interesting byproduct of post-traumatic stress, because you then become attached to going to war and going to fight, etc., because that's all you know. And so I think that was an interesting perspective as well, that he was trying to save himself to be able to go back into combat, and the dog was seen perhaps as a way of addressing that. So yes, I found it quite credible.
There's another element here, folks. You've got a couple of loners, though it wasn't always so, that need one another to move forward. And I think that's, again, the point. So many people who are lonely need somebody or something, and often it's a pet or an animal of some description that gives them light. And that's another element to this picture.
Yep.
And some of the scenery, I thought, shot by Newton Thomas Sigel, it's quite striking. I really, it's picture postcard stuff in amongst that road trip where there's all the trauma going on, Dave.
Definitely, and I thought that was one of the elements that I really liked of this film. When I said before that it has that alternative feel to it, it almost felt like Tatum and his co-director had deliberately made this movie so it had elements of films like Nomadland, but then also had the comedic moments, like the cameo from comedian Bill Burr popping up as a racist police officer, the moments of Tatum pretending that he's blind to get a free room. I thought that was really interesting, because a lot of films that try to mix that mainstream comedy with that alternative kind of cinema feel flop really badly, and I thought this film actually did it quite well, to the point where I'm actually kind of interested now to see where Tatum goes as a director from here. Will he go into mainstream cinema, or will he kind of be a director like Robin Wright, who prefers to go for that more alternative feel to her films?
Yeah, I mean, again, I would think the former rather than the latter, but it'll be interesting to see, as you rightly describe. I mean, his proclivity so far has certainly been to mainstream product, so I'm not sure that he's going to change his ways. But let's get a score, and we'll start with the low ball of Jacqui.
Oh, thank you, the low ball. I was actually really interested to hear what you guys have said about it, and maybe it makes me think about it on a different level. But while watching the film, I found it depressing and I found it distressing, and I've given it a 4 out of 10.
But see, when you say distressing, that indeed was the point, wasn't it, Jacqui?
Look, Alex, I just didn't get it. You know?
Yeah. No, fair enough.
It actually didn't work for me. I sat there not believing it and not enjoying it at all. Really.
Peter?
Look, I quite liked the film, and it reminded me a lot of these returned soldier type films and the way they cope with living in the civilian world and then wanting to go back to conflict because they're so drawn to it. So I like the film. I gave it 7 out of 10.
Mm-hmm. And you, Dave?
Yeah, I think Jacqui might have nailed it there, because I've been told in the past that I love depressing films. So, yeah, it's probably one of the reasons why I liked it, but I'm giving it 8 out of 10. And did we do Jacqui's score? I don't think we did Jacqui's score then.
Yeah, Jacqui gave it a 4.
Okay.
A fail. So you've doubled her score with an 8. I also thought it was a very decent film, and it had a lot of elements to it. And, I'm not saying it was a perfect film, but I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 as well. So Dog gets 4, 7, 7, and an 8.